Hello and good day. Thank you for joining me on my Pain to Purpose series. Today I have a very special guest with me. His name is Marlo, the Motivator. Today we will be discussing on how to overcome trauma and gun violence by faith. Thank you for joining me, Marlo.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on your show. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Most definitely. So would you like me to start towards the beginning? Or what would you like me to start?
I have had the honor of getting familiar with your story, but I would love for you to share with the audience what you have been through and how you were able to overcome it.
I grew up in Oakland. I'm not sure if your audience know where Oakland is, but it's Oakland, California, right outside of San Francisco, right across the Bay Bridge. And I experienced a rough upbringing. My mother was addicted to narcotics. Her drug of choice was crack cocaine, as well as she was addicted to tobacco and liquor. My father wasn't in the house. This guy is what they called at the time a functional alcoholic. That term is something I still really don't sit well with me because to me, the way I look at it is you may be functional enough to go to work, but when you come home, everything is not functional, right? Beating your family members up and things of that nature. And, I once witnessed my father hit my mother over the head with a tire iron. And I'm not sure if people know what that is, but that's something that you use to tighten up the bolts, the lug nuts on your car. And so I grew up in this kind of household where, I was seeing violence, a lot of violence, almost weekly, if not daily. I finally, I think at about the age of 8, about the age of 8 or 7, maybe even 7, I experienced the first set of gun violence that I was able to see. I was in a car with my father and my mother and my uncle. I happened to be sitting in the back seat behind my father, who was in the driver's seat, and my uncle was in the passenger seat. The rear passenger side of the vehicle. My mother was in the front seat. However, my mother and father arguing about this weapon, a gun that my father had in the car, and they started to kind of tuggle over it a little bit. And somehow the gun fired, discharged. And my uncle, scared, grabbed me, picked me up, took me out the car and took off running down the street with me. And I hear my mom and father arguing and things of that nature as my uncle make the getaway. We get to his friend's house a few blocks away, and he put me in the room, and I'm worried about my mother, and I heard him say to his friend, I don't know, I think this guy his daddy just killed my sister. And I'm a little kid, I hearing, this type of things at that early age was, not wholesome, not healthy for any kid, right? And so I just want to show you some of the violent type of things I was around. I see much more violence than that, but that's just one little episode. However, at around the same age, 8 or 9, I got involved in the drug game. The average person will ask, how do an 8-year-old get involved in the drug game? And this was the deal. The deal was I would stand on one side of the street on a corner with a basketball or a football in my hand, as the older drug dealers would stand across the street on the other side, and they sold drugs to the people that was coming to purchase narcotics. As their pockets started to get full, maybe this was like in the 80s, so they was making at this time a lot of money on the street corner. And their pockets started to get full, and they'd bring over $800, $1,000 at a time and put them in one of my pockets. And it was like each one of my pockets belonged to one of the drug dealers. And at any given moment, I would have like 10, 11, 12, 13 grand in my pocket. And I had someone ask me one time, like, why did they have you stand across the street with the money in a ball? And the idea was they take the little kid, put him across the street with a ball, and I'm dribbling the ball, a basketball. When the police pull up and maybe go to search them, or maybe another drug dealer come up and try to rob them, they wouldn't have much money on them. The little kid across the street would have all the money. And they trained me that if I see something that looked crazy, like a police car pull up or somebody jump out, trying to rob them, my job was to walk down the street with the basketball and all the money in my pocket. And so that was the deal. My paycheck was my mother. I didn't get anything. They paid my mother in drugs. However, what I did learn out of this experience, what I did get, I got a love of money. I became addicted to trying to like have a lot of money. I love that feeling to have money in my pocket. I seen the respect that came along with the money. I seen they were able to get these nice cars, dress real nice, eat well, and things of that nature. And I wanted that. I was tired of being homeless. I hated to had to stand in long lines at St. Vincent de Paul with my mother and get food. And so I started to see that, hey, this is a cool way to make money. Fast forward a little bit. Going through life, I experienced the homelessness. My mother, who'd been evicted, just in Oakland, West Oakland, we lived in like 26 different apartments. Over the course of a 17-year span, I lived in like 26 different apartments, 13 or 14 different motels, 2 times in the Salvation Army, even in a drug rehabilitation center with my mother. And at some point I got fed up, right? I got tired of it. And I thought to myself, I have to do something to get out of these unwholesome living situations, right? I remember a house. I'm going to go this route with you for a second. I remember we lived at this one house, and my mother didn't pay the water bill. She used the money on drugs or whatever she wanted to do with it. And I remember East Bay Mud, which is a water company, coming out, and they turned our water off at the meter in the ground. My mother went outside and she turned the water back on, and so we had running water again, right? And so this happened, and so I guess they got worried, or they figured out that our meter was running again, and so they sent out a technician, and the technician turned it off again. This time he put a lock on it, a big padlock on it, and he left. We didn't have no water for a few days. We started having ants and nets and stuff flying around the house, and they couldn't even flush the toilet. And so my mother decided to not to be outdone by East Bay Mud. She went back outside to the curb and she broke the lock off and turned the water back on. And so we were back, taking showers and living a good life again. And needless to say, they came out again. This time they wasn't playing around. They actually took the whole meter out of the ground. Now, I'm not sure if your audience or anybody ever looked in the meter area next to the curb and seen the whole meter missing. But as a kid, I remember seeing that, and it's just reality set in. Even as a little kid, like, man, this is not the way you want to live. And so, at about the age of about 14 or so, I started to, figure out, hey, it's a way that I can make money. And that way is I'm gonna try to sell some marijuana. And so I purchased some marijuana with a couple of dollars I did have. And I decided to sell marijuana. I quickly realized that I didn't have enough money to buy the big load of marijuana to really make a return on my investment. Back then you have to have a lot of, pounds and pounds of weed, which I wasn't able to afford.
Right.
And so, I thought to myself, like, look, I'm using a term that I hear that was used. I had to diversify my portfolio. I took the monies that I did have and I decided to invest in something else. And what came to my mind was crack, right? I remember how much money I used to hold in my pocket as a kid for the drug dealers that was making a lot of money. And I decided to take the money you got, buy some crack, and see what happened with that, And I did it. I invested in crack, and it became lucrative. I started to make lots of money, right? Lots and lots of money, right? To the point where, I had the nice cars myself, the nice jewelry, the nice clothes. I didn't have to worry about eating anymore. In fact, I would come along with that with women. That was easy. I had nice women. They wanted to be around me. And so, right. This was something right. I said, this is a good life, right? At least I thought. Right. But I want to stop there long enough to say that my mother, though she had a habit and she was trying to overcome and fight, I remember her always trying to tell me and anybody she could tell that, God loves you. You should go to church, trying to get us to go to church. And she was still dealing with her own habits, but she always installed us and made sure we knew that there was a God and that, that Jesus died for us. And so that was always in my head at the same time. Yeah.
That's great, though. That's great.
And so what I did do, I continued to sell and make money until one day I finally got caught up and arrested. I was arrested. I got out of jail, and once again, I continued on doing what I was doing, and the lifestyle. And once another time, I was arrested again. So this arrest happened over, the course of several different times. So finally, my luck ran out, or should I say, my grace ran out, because I believe that God was giving me an opportunity, right, to make decisions, and I was making decisions based off of my what I've seen, right, what I witnessed, and versus actually sitting down, going deep within to try to figure out the best way to be successful. For me, it was easy to grab a gun and sell dope and all that, and so that's what I seen everybody doing, pimping, and that's all things I saw, and so I thought that was the avenue. And the grace that God gave me, I'm gonna stop here for a minute, was really, I think back and I reflect, there was times where I got pulled over by the police, and I had a weapon in the car with me, and the police searched the car, they didn't find a weapon, and I'm thinking, like, how did they find that? And to me, that was an avenue, an opportunity for God, telling me, like, you need to stop doing what you're doing. And I just didn't take heed. So I was finally arrested at one time, and I was sentenced to 6 years in state prison. Would you like me to keep going, or you want me to stop for a moment?
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. All right. So I was sentenced to 6 years in state prison. Well, I want to say this because I think it's important for your audience to understand. I was told, and I remember going through school, that I wasn't the best student. And they're right. My grades reflected that at times. I remember getting 1.0 GPA. I remember getting 0.0 GPA. Not long ago, one of my daughters saw it, my old report card when I was in high school. She was like, "Daddy, you had all Fs?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." Right. And so the average person would look and say, "This guy is not that bright. What's wrong with you?" Right. But what people don't take into consideration, and I hope your audience do, is this. You have a kid, right? You have a youngster that's out here living a life like myself. And to no fault of the kid's own, right? I didn't ask to be born into that situation. And I'm not making excuses, right? I'm gonna accept responsibility, but I want your audience to understand this. I remember at nights being at home with no PG&E, no running water, right? All we had was house phones back then. We didn't have a house phone. And I remember my mother being gone all night. And I remember praying to God, like, God, bring my mother home safely. 11 o'clock at night, right? At least I'm assuming it's around that time. I fall asleep, wake up, go in her room, looking around. She's not there. And then finally, hearing a sound of snoring sound. I'm like, she's home. So I go in the room and look, go give her a kiss on her forehead. And I go lay back down. And it's probably 1 or 2 in the morning at this time, right? I'm a little kid. I remember this happening frequently. And so thank God for bringing her home. I fall asleep. And then remember, I have to go to school, right? So I would wake up without an alarm. I just bounce up like, oh, time for school. And so I get dressed, put on the dirty clothes that I had a washing machine. I put on these dirty clothes, no breakfast, go to school the next morning, rush there because I'm running, halfway late, get to class, sit down, and at the desk, damn near falling asleep. And the teachers put a test in front of me. Hey, take this test. I look around the room, I see people with pencils, people, prepared. I wasn't prepared. And so you look at my report card and you say, hey man, why did you get all these D's and C's? Well, I mean, you could say I'm a horrible student, or you could say what's going on in this kid's life, right? And so I don't fault the teachers for not noticing that. But if you have anybody that's watching this, that you are an instructor or of some type, right, a teacher or something like that, and you're dealing with students, be mindful of that. Be mindful of that kid, what that kid could be going through at home. It's very important that you might be that person that can step in and save that kid's life. But I'll move on. And so, yes, I went to the county jail. I sat there for a moment, and then I was transferred to San Quentin State Prison. Once again, I'm not sure if your audience know where that is. That's I was right up there on the bay in Oakland and San Francisco Bay. And so I was there for about a month or so, and a big riot broke off. And prison is very, just like our society, very divided, right? Racist. And so you had two ethnic groups get into it. It doesn't matter what the other group was. One of them were the blacks, and it was another group. And so the big riot happened over some cigarettes, right? I don't smoke cigarettes, I don't sell cigarettes, but somebody owed someone some money. So a big riot happened. And after that, a lot of people were shipped out of San Quentin. I happened to be one of the folks that was sent to the hole for about a week. And then I was sent up to High Desert State Prison. Now, this is a prison that's located up right outside of Reno, Nevada area, but it's still in the California side. If memory serves me correct, you actually has to kind of go into Nevada and then come back out into California to get to this prison. And I got there, and this was my first time ever witnessing snow. I never seen snow before in person until I got to prison. And it was snowing, short sleeve shirts on. And I remember the officer saying, make sure y'all stay in a single file line. If you're talking too much, we're gonna do this to you, do that to you. It was like really a strange experience. And so while I'm there, I started thinking to myself, like, man, Marlo, what happened in your life? How did you get yourself in this here situation? While I was in there, I had a phone call one day, from a phone call, but it was a call from the counselor that asked me to come over to the desk, to his office. So I come to the counselor's office, and he said, somebody in your family died. I'm like, somebody in my family died? He's like, yeah. He said, I told your family to call back, and they're going to call in a moment. So at this point, I'm stressing out, right? I'm like, oh man, what the heck is going on? So his phone rang, and I got on the phone. It was one of my sisters. She told me another sister of mine had died. And so I wasn't able to go to that funeral, right? And so I remember sitting back thinking, like, who else is going to die while you're gone, right? What are you doing? You know, to get it together, right? And so, I'm praying and I'm asking God, like, what should I be doing for myself? And I started reading books, and I started realizing that every book that I read, it was a quote, right? Somebody had some famous quote, Oprah Winfrey, whoever, right? All these famous people have quotes and things like that. So I said, you know what? I like what I'm reading, but these are other people's quotes, which is great. But I said, I need to make up a quote for myself that I can live by. And so the first quote I ever made up that I remember was called, it was like this. It said, prison is not an option, yet it is still a choice. Once again, prison is not an option, yet it is still a choice. And people can use this, right? It could be whatever your situation is, right? Abuse is not an option, yet it is still a choice, right? Drugs is not an option, yet it is still a choice. Whoever is listening to this today, whatever you're going through, right? You put that in there and take out prison, because maybe you're not someone who's been in prison, but you got to make sure you make some good choices, right? And so for me, I had to make sure that I couldn't let prison be an option for me. Jail couldn't be an option anymore, right? But I had to make a choice every day. I knew that I had to do the right thing, right, to make sure that is not an option for me. And so I was shortly after that, I was transferred from that prison up there, High Desert, over to a prison in Jamestown, California, which is over by Sonora, Stockton area. They transferred me there. It's called Sierra Conservation Center. And so when I got to Sierra Conservation Center, I had my mind made up, right? The guy that told me you got to do everything you can to be the best person you can. So when you come home, you keep walking in that same, that same vein. And so I enrolled into a carpentry course. They had carpentry in there. They was teaching carpentry. And I said, this can be helpful. And so I started taking that course and started learning how to do things like, build houses, right? Put up doors, put up windows, tear down houses. I got real good with that. And I told myself, listen, you're good with this, but you may not be able to use that when you go home, right? You may not get that opportunity. So what else can you learn while you're here, right? Instead of just sitting around playing, it's a game they call Pinochle in there. And I learned how to play that game. But however, since I've been home, I haven't met anyone that knew how to play that game. So I know there's a lot of individuals that sit there all day in prison and play Pinochle and play chess. I knew that, hey, look, when I come home, I'm not going to be spending my time playing chess, right? I need to do something.
Right.
And so I transferred into out of carpentry, and I asked to be transferred into a welding course. They taught welding there. And so I started learning how to weld, right? They had underwater welding, they had tack welding, these different type of weldings. And so I got familiar with that. And after I picked up a little skill there, I told myself, you may not get a job at welding or carpentry. what else can you get while you're here? And so I transferred over into auto mechanics, right? My mind was made up that, if I can't get a job doing construction work or welding, I would maybe learn how to maybe I get a job changing brakes or, changing oil, right? Doing tune-ups, whatever it takes. I just wanted to be prepared. And so I got real good with that. And then finally, my release date came. I had my mind made up that once again, I wasn't going back into a prison or a jail unless I wanted to go in there on my own and walk in, visit people, encourage people, inspire individuals, and then go back out when I'm ready. And that's the only way I was going to go back. And so I was released. And I must tell you that though you have your mind made up on things and though you want to try to accomplish things, a lot of times I tell you that wanting to do something and having to do it or you got to do it is two different things, right? And so, you know what I mean? And so what I did do, I came home, I was on parole and probation. I was on 5 years probation, felony probation in our county as well as parole. And so I had, to try to follow all these rules. At the same time, I was trying to find employment, and it was tough, right? I'll be honest with you, it wasn't, but like I thought. Before I ever had to experience trying to find a job and having the hardship of people saying, "Are you a convicted felon?" I always thought that people that came home was making excuses. I said, "Oh man, it can't be that difficult," but it was. It was more difficult than I thought. And I kept hustling. Finally, a gentleman, he don't mind me ever saying his name, but the company was Top of the Line Builders, Matthew Trulio. He gave me a chance. He said, I know you was in prison. You've been working hard. You've been trying. Come on, man. I put you to work as a carpenter apprentice. This is a skill I learned while I was in prison. I didn't know how to do anything in carpentry prior to going to prison. And so he gave me a chance and paid me $10.50 an hour to do the work. I showed up every day. I went there, I bust my butt to do the job. But I realized that I was worth more than $10.50 an hour, right? But you have to accept it, right? My wife, she actually told me, because it was times where I said, I don't know if I can do this. And she said, hey, you got to start somewhere. Just take it and just stay focused. And I think it's important that your audience know this, that you got to know who you are and what your worth is, right? Who are you and why you're here? And I knew that being a carpenter is really wasn't why I'm really here on this earth, right? I believe God put me here for a different purpose. And so I stayed at that job for a while, and I went to DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, and I got the commercial handbook. And I wanted to learn how to drive trucks. I figured that's a lucrative gig, and I felt like I might be able to find an opportunity. And so I started studying the handbook, got pretty good at it, and I passed the commercial test. So I had my commercial Class A permit. At this time, I was still working for the Top of the Line Builders, but I was trying to find other employment in the driving field. The guy, Matt, at Top of the Line Builders, had connection at a truck driving company in San Francisco. He knew somebody worked there, and he said, maybe he can help you out. My business is slowing down, and I know you need more money. And so he connected me with that individual. They brought me in, gave me an opportunity, hired me for $21 an hour. I've been out of prison for about maybe close to almost 5 months. And they told me I would have to get my Class A license because I only had a permit. And I had to join the Teamsters Union. I had 90 days to do both. If not, they would fire me. And I taught myself, with God help, because I know I couldn't do it, how to drive commercial trucks, 18-wheeler trucks, big old trucks. I went to work every morning, and then on weekends at 2 a.m, I would go out to San Francisco and go on this lot with their trucks. And they trusted me. They gave me the key to get in the gate, and I would do everything I can to teach myself how to drive these big trucks. And about 60-some days, maybe 70 days in, I passed the test. And so I was hired full time there. My family had benefits, and it was a good experience for me. I won't say the job itself was great, because I did later on run into some problems, but that's another story. I took that experience from there after a couple of years and went to another company, and my pay went up, $25 an hour, and another company, then another $30 an hour. And I'm out of jail and I'm out of prison, and I'm making this good money. My wife and I was able to purchase our first house, probably maybe 4 years after prison. And so, but it was still something missing, right? I felt like there was more I had to do. And, I felt like, I wanted to show that I'm a pretty good student. And so I enrolled into community college, and I started taking classes. I look up after some years, I had 5 different associate degrees. And I felt like, hey, you got 5 associate degrees, that's good, but can you do more? And so I transferred into university, and I went and got my bachelor's degree in sociology. But it was still a void missing, and that was going back to give back to people that was like myself, right? People that's incarcerated, people that's they call it system impacted, people that's grew up. Maybe some people grew up with good lives. Don't get me wrong, they just make a bad decision. But I wanted to go back and speak to those individuals, so I started going into different nonprofit organizations, speaking to youth, going to Oakland Midnight basketball, where they have youth that's on the verge of making maybe the bad decision, and I want to go tell them about that decision they're about to make, that they shouldn't make that decision. And so I did that for a while, and then one day I was driving the garbage truck, and some days I had to pick up recycles at the curbside. Some days I pick up trash, and God spoke to me clearly. He said, "Look, one day you're picking up trash. The next day you're picking up recyclables. What you should be doing is going into the prisons and picking up the people that people look at as like trash and recycling them." And I said, wow, that's deep. I should be doing that, right? And so I started going back into the jails. I went back into San Quentin, a place where I spent some time. They allowed me to come in and speak to the individuals in there, the gentlemen. I don't call them inmates, the gentlemen. See them as who they should be, right? Who they could be.
Absolutely.
And so I started going back in there and encouraging them and inspiring them, showing them that they can come home and be successful. And then I found myself going to Jamestown, the prison I told you that I was at out there in Sonora area. I started going in there, speaking to the transitional classes. These are classes individuals go to prior to coming home. Right before they come home, they try to put you in a class and try to give you like some kind of kickstart to your release. Right. And so I started speaking to those classes and, dedicate my time. This is all free. I drive 3 hours to go speak, an hour and a half there, an hour and a half back, just to encourage them. And then I started speaking to their night classes as well. And then I started going into DVI, which is a dual vocational institution, which is a prison in Tracy, California, to encourage and do the same thing there. And I love doing it, right? It's like, it's just no feeling. It's a great feeling I get out of I feel fulfilled when I go in there and try to encourage and show individuals what they can accomplish. Since I've been home, and I told you about the degrees and some of my success, I was able to publish and became an author, wrote 3 different books, 2 children's books, and also a self-help book for individuals. And there's so many other great things. My father, love my children dearly, my wife. I have a daughter that's at one of the local universities doing well. And it's been a great experience. God's been good to me. It's been a blessing to be able to give back to others.